Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the second session, and hopefully a little bit better on the being able to hear us side of things. But welcome to ArcGIS Online, choosing the right app. My name is Kelly Giroux Wilcox. I'm a product manager with ArcGIS Online, and I have with me Alan Rex, who is a consultant with professional services.
Hello.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, everybody.
And today we're going to go through kind of choosing the right app. So I guess I'll get started. All right, so really to get started, I'm just going to go through the agenda so you know what's coming. And really we're going to kind of do a quick overview of web mapping applications in ArcGIS Online, go through some considerations for building your app, look into some of the newer web applications like Instant Apps, StoryMaps, Dashboards, and Experience Builders, and their goals as kind of app builders or app configurators. Also, we're going to go through a little bit of a mental model about how to choose the right app, and then Alan is going to go through kind of all of this theory, the boring theory stuff that I'll cover first, with a practical example, so you can see how you really kind of think through in choosing the right app. So I guess I'll get started. So ArcGIS Online, and by the numbers. So yesterday, actually, Jack did a really good job in plenary setting us up to talk about web mapping applications. A lot of the sessions that we saw in plenary or content was shared through a web application. And there's over 6 million web mapping applications in ArcGIS Online of about the 42 million items. 5 million of those are built with Web App Builder, configurable apps, Instant Apps, StoryMaps Classic. And then we are doing a little bit different tracking for some of the newer applications. So we've also got 550,000 of the new StoryMaps, 400,000 of the new dashboards, about 40,000 new web experience, and about 46,000 hub pages. So there's a lot of content out there that we're sharing with our customers, or that you're sharing with your customers, and building to really engage and tell that geospatial story. Of the web applications out there, about 20% are shared with the public. This is great. This is usually kind of so that you are informing the public of things. About 22% are shared with specific members and groups. And that's really the finest detail of the security model with ArcGIS Online, where you're just sharing with specific members who are in one of your groups. This can be done for kind of small audiences, but really keeps only the right people looking at your applications and data. And then about 8% are shared with the organization. So that's where everyone in the organization can see the application and the data. So that's how the sharing breaks down. About 50% are shared privately. So those are usually apps that are being built, are being tested, and being kind of run through or in that process of the build. So why web mapping applications? And it's really interesting to take a look at, because we've kind of gone from this place of paper maps to communicate our spatial content, like this gentleman looking in the map gallery, to interactive web mapping applications. And what they do is they really allow your customers to get a little bit more intimate with the data or your concept, and kind of touch the data, explore the data, really kind of see how it's all related to each other. Why are web mapping applications used? To communicate status, to answer questions, sometimes to complete a task. There are web apps that are specific to entering data, or we'll talk a little bit about adopting a highway later on. They can be used to start a conversation by exploring a new topic or showing a new pattern. You can engage the public with your data. Also, because they are mapping and they are maps, you can really just see and inspire a conversation of geospatial awareness, or start a geospatial conversation. And of course, you can also tell a story. With StoryMaps, we saw some great examples of that today, and I think also in the plenary today, I was blown away by that story map showing them walking across the world. So let's take a look at some of these applications that are out in the wild. I really just took a couple of these off of Twitter yesterday and today, and want to show kind of some examples of what we're seeing right now. And today is a hot day. There's some fires out there, so it is something where we'll have to take a look. I guess we're going to look at the fires. So I guess the first thing is this is just a pretty standard fire evacuation map where you can actually search, where you can search your address or place and really just see whether or not you're in an evacuation area, either by clicking on the links or taking a look at where that location is. This is built with Web App Builder. It's great for having that awareness of where the fire locations are and the evacuations. Another example of this is with the BC wildfires dashboard, and they're actually using a dashboard to show this information. And what's neat about this is you can actually see quite a few different fires. But because it's a dashboard, you also have this holistic view of what's happening. We can see that we've had 66 new fires this week, 23 in the last 2 days. We still have this very deep visual symbology that can show us information about what types of fires there are, fires of note, whether they're out of control, where there's evacuations. So it really is this rich amount of spatial information for the public. Another example that's a little bit different is traffic calming program score. So this is a really great app to take a look at kind of what's being done to try and calm the traffic in Austin. One of the things that's really great about this is it's using the interactive legend instant app, so you can actually interact with the legend to find out more. Really, this is a 3-step process of kind of scoring streets, and then you'll see there's a step 2 of actually collecting data, and then step 3 of actually seeing project selection. So what you can actually do is toggle these features on and off to get a little bit more information and understand kind of where projects are in step 3, where they're in step 2, where they've just been doing the citywide scoring and what that is. It's a really great way of engaging the public with your data and having them interact with it to kind of understand a little bit more than just looking at a map. I'd say kind of looking up your location and then understanding kind of what's around is some of the bread and butter of kind of public applications. In this example, it's where can you get COVID vaccine sites. You can see, you can just search an area. I'm just clicking on it, but you can search. And then with this app, it'll show you all of the locations and then bring in some information about the different types of areas, schedule appointments, and pharmacies. So this is a really great information piece to get people engaged kind of with the information that's around them. Another great one is this recycling routes. It's a little bit different than the vaccination location, but it's similar. And again, it's just providing some local information. Excellent. About kind of just curbside recycling and collection and what's being collected on which day. This is a really great experience builder app that actually helps citizens understand whether or not their river is fit to play in. And that is based on kind of runoff and the health of the river. It's a really great application because it has this map, it shows some information using some clustering, but also has these additional pages in the application so that you can really get the full story and all of the connections to what's important about playing in the river. You can get information about data sources, and even with the map, there's an option to take action now. So this really is kind of an integrated experience where users can really kind of get in touch with what's happening. And then the last one is StoryMap. And this is a great story map of just kind of a public art walk location that guides tourists through basically through some public art that's available. And as you can see, oops, this is what happens when I go through demos before I start presenting. But as you can see here, we kind of start with a page and then there's a nice map. And as you nicely scroll through this map, as it draws, you'll be able to kind of go through and understand more about where the locations are, what type of art you can see in this really nice guided way. So number 2, 3 is Mother Earth. Now we'll go back to the slides. So that's really just a quick example of some of the applications that are out there. And there's lots of different purposes for building applications. The ones I'm going to show are public because I have access to those, but there are a lot of kind of private apps that can be shared too. Apps really are the user experience for your maps and data. So when you're thinking about you're creating an app, you're creating a map, you're picking that visualization, it's really the app that is going to guide that interaction with your customers. So it does present the information in a meaningful way, but it's really that meaningful interactivity that really enhances the user experience. So when you're building an app, really think about kind of how do you want your users to experience your data? What do they need to do? It's really about the actions in the application, as opposed to kind of just that static picture of where things are that we're trying to show. In the ArcGIS Online ecosystem, we have a cornucopia of apps. There's lots of different types of apps built for different purposes. And as we go through these, we're talking about choosing the right app. And sometimes there's a couple apps that can actually meet our needs. So it is important to kind of know what these types of apps are, get familiar with some of them, especially for those workflows that you're currently using. So these are some of the icons of the different apps. We've got Instant Apps, Web App Builder, StoryMaps, Experience Builder. I've got App Studio in here, the Map Viewer, ArcGIS Earth, Dashboards, Survey 1, 2, 3. So there's quite a few different types of applications that you can build, and it's really going to be about kind of building what works for your workflow and your audience. So we're going to talk through an example, Alan will, about the city of Pleasantville and their Adopt a Highway program. And this is often how kind of someone gets a project to create some apps, and it's, hey, the district of Pleasantville wants to build an Adopt a Highways program to clean up and maintain the natural beauty along the roadways. When this happens and when a volunteer organization sets up, the district of Pleasantville will put a public sign advertising their organization. So really, when we look at this project from the GIS kind of analyst or team situation, what do they need to do? They need to create some geospatial tools and apps to facilitate and promote this program. So what might they need to do? Oh, facilitate citizens adopting a specific highway. So how are they going to make that easy to do through a web application? Facilitate supporting processes like trash collection or equipment during these cleanups. Maybe creating marketing materials to promote the program, get more people to kind of sign up. And then also monitoring incoming requests, progress, and then being able to show that return on investment to the city managers and the people who are funding this program. It's really important that once something's put out that you can also show the results. So there's kind of a holistic set of requirements to look at when creating these apps. So some considerations when building your apps. The first one is to define the purpose. And like, this is, I think, very much key to kind of what you're building. What is the goal of your web application? Is there one purpose or many? In that situation with the city of Pleasantville, there's actually quite a few purposes there. So maybe you do want to break it up into a couple different applications, or maybe you want an application that does a couple things. But it's really important to kind of break that problem down into kind of manageable pieces of what you're going to do. So other questions: how does interactive mapping actually enhance your data or topic? Why does it need to be an interactive map? Once you figure out the why, that's usually where the interaction comes in, and you can start figuring out what is that, what are those kind of key decision points or factors that are going to point you to one app or the other? Is there a task or a job that is completed with your application? And then is there something that you actually create with your application? Do you output a report? Is there knowledge someone takes away? Do you print something and send it off? These are kind of some things to think about with the purpose. The other thing that inherently impacts the purpose is your data. And your data is also something that drives your app and drives your purpose, or the purpose can drive the data that you have. So there's always kind of a bit of an egg and chicken question of what came first, the purpose or your data, or the purpose. And it's really important to kind of think through what data you have. Sometimes you come into projects already having data. Sometimes you need to go out and collect data, and sometimes you need to transform your data so that it's actually going to work into your purpose. So there are some specific data types and data capabilities that we do have functionality that matches those. So this comes to a little bit of app fit, your data considerations, and then also the purpose. So there's things like time. If you want to be able to animate your data using time, you often need date and time fields. 3D, if you want to show your data on 3D, it's another specific set of apps. Being able to show imagery, being able to show the attachments potentially from data collection, being able to edit, or having interactive symbology. These are all things to think through with your data that will kind of define the purpose or will define the type of app that you're looking for. An example of kind of functional fit and the purpose is this example here, where we actually have kind of some users, actually they're a group of volunteers going out to pick up trash for the Adopt a Highways program. And what I have here are 3 separate applications that are actually using the same data. They've got similar functionality, but the user experience is a little bit different, and I wanted to highlight this. So as you can see, we've got StoryMaps, Dashboards, and Instant Apps. Okay, and what we're going to see next is actually what this looks like in action. So just a couple differences, just a couple things to take a look at is really the user experience. So we can start here with an instant app. The goal of this instant app, its attachment viewer, is really to show the attachments in collected data. You can see here we've got some really intuitive, navigation through the actual data or data pickup. This is a story map using the journal functionality, and as you can see, it's got a bit of a different map right here. And then you can also scroll through and actually see a little bit more of these locations. This is very similar to the story map, but it's got a little bit of a different style for how I chose to design it. The next one to take a look at is this Penticton pickup dashboard. And again, it's very similar. We see similar information, except in order to see the pop-ups, you need to click on the location. You can see some specific information, but I've also added this indicator here because there's additional data in the data set to show the pickup completeness score. So I guess all of these applications could do the trick of just showing an attachment in a pop-up, but it's really up to you to decide which application and which user experience really is what you're looking to accomplish with the app that you're building. I'll go back to the slideshow. Additionally, with Experience Builder, there are quite a few different templates within Experience Builder that also perform similar functionality. So just because I showed, I guess, StoryMaps and StoryMaps, Instant Apps, and Dashboards doesn't mean that similar functionality isn't available in Experience Builder or Field Maps. They're just kind of some of the quickest ways to get this up and running that I was familiar with, which I'll get into kind of familiarity in just a second. So the next big part to talk about is really about the audience. It's really about the audience and who we're going to target with the audience, because that's who's going to be who you're building this for. And like, is your audience a bunch of teammates that you already work with and are familiar with your applications? Are they seasoned experts? Is it the public? Are they impacted citizens? Let's say with an evacuation, are they stressed out? Who are these citizens? Or is it people that are just kind of doing a general internet search and coming across your application? You would make different design choices for each of these different audiences. Another one is the technical skill. And this, again, ties right into the audience or the target audience, but what is the familiarity with the topic? Are they GIS people? Are they aware of tools? Would they know what a measure tool is or what to use it for? Or is it something where they would need a guided experience? Are they willing to try and click on buttons, or do they need a guided workflow? When I'm designing for the public, I often design for my mother, Janet P. Giroux, great lady, but she's very, very, very fearful of clicking on something and having the internet explode on her. So it's really important for her that she feels confident in what she's doing in order to successfully interact with applications. It's really important to kind of identify with who that person is, what their skill is while you're designing, and that will also impact kind of the app that you will choose and then the complexity of the workflow that you're going to approach. Another one is just the basic requirements. So sometimes you're building for a specific person. So usually with the public, accessibility is a basic requirement. A lot of apps, especially if they're put on government websites, need to be accessible. They need to work with assistive technology. You need to think about color contrast and color choices kind of while you're building it. Are the users going to be using mobile browsers, like actually using their phones, or an actual browser? If it's an actual browser, again, it's something to consider with your app choices. Are they going to be sharing this content publicly, like just through a URL, or is it going to be embedded in a website? And then if we have kind of this world audience, what is the needed language support or translation? For some users, they're fine using the translation or the default localization that we have available, but sometimes data needs to be translated and there needs to be a smooth transition. So it's really something to keep an eye on. The next one is design and customization, and that's how much design and control you want to have with your application. And we have some significant differences in terms of the amount of customization that you can do with our different app builders. So it is really something to consider kind of when you're choosing what to use. Some design choices to think about is like the layout of the application. Where do you want to put the tools? What tools are available for you? And then what is the flow through the different sections? As you can see here, I've got Experience Builder, where you can really kind of pick what you want to put in into the application and align it exactly as you want. With StoryMaps, the design, they have quite a few different types of themes and some different functionality, such as the different types of map tours, but they've also created these themes and this content to have really good defaults in the beginning. And then with Instant Apps, kind of the experience there is pretty straightforward, but you do have some customization capabilities, additional tools to add with full setup, or actual positions of kind of common widgets, and you can control that. So it is important to think about like how much control do you need over the design and customization of your applications. Another one is branding. Branding can be really, really, really important, and sometimes branding isn't as important, but for quite a few large organizations, you need to ensure that your apps are following brand guidelines. Sometimes you want to be able to control the CSS. You want to be able to pick kind of what is your symbology and styling. And then with the URL, whether or not you want that to be a specific URL, with Hub you can specify your URLs, or if they're going to be just embedding it in a website. And then the last design and customization thing to think through is the interaction, and being able to design or customize the interaction. Is it a single purpose application? The instant apps are generally geared towards single purpose applications. Are there multiple things that someone needs to do? That's where you might need to move over to something like Web App Builder or Experience Builder to put 2 or more workflows together. They also work just for single purpose applications. For the navigation, do you want to continue to work through, like how do you want to navigate? Is it a scroll? Is it a zoom? How are people going to actually navigate through your application? And then there's the mapping capabilities. So whether or not the applications that you're using support kind of the classic map viewer functionality or the new map viewer functionality. And sometimes we talk about this as the difference between what apps are using the 3x JavaScript API and the 4x JavaScript API. With the newer map viewer, it's got a lot of great new capabilities, like being able to group layers, being able to have multi-component pop-ups using dot density. And some of that functionality is only supported with applications that were built in the newer JavaScript API. There were some functional reasons, some technical reasons with the previous version, which is why we had to move over to a new version. So there is some transition right now, and it's important to really consider kind of which of those applications or that functionality you really need. The apps that I'm going to focus on are the new apps that are built with the 4X. So should be so they do support all of that new functionality, but sometimes there are kind of the apps that you've already created that you still want to work, and they will work with the newer maps. They just might not be able to take advantage of all of that functionality. The last part is the app creator, app artist, or you who's building the application. And really that controls a lot of what you're going to create because of your knowledge of the data and tools. Also, how much time do you have to complete the project? Is this something where you need to have it up and ready and out by the end of the day, the end of the hour? Or is this something where like you've got like 2 weeks or 2 months to put together the best app that you really can? So it's really important to kind of consider that into what it is. Also, do you want to learn technology or build on something you already know? And then what kind of flair and choices do you like to add? Do you like to spend time picking the different colors and picking the perfect layout? Or are you fine to just say, hey, it's done, I'm moving on to my next project? Each app creator, each app that's being designed has different things that has different pushing and pulling components of kind of where you need to make those decisions. So really considering who you are, what your skills are, and what you want to do with the available technology is really important. So now I'm going to go through the ArcGIS Online web apps. So I'm going to start, and again, all of these web applications are built with the 4X API, so they all work with all of the new functionality in ArcGIS Online. As you can see here, Instant Apps, they're new. They are new, and they are new, but they're familiar. They came from a lot of their kind of startings were in the configurable apps, but we have kind of recreated them, redesigned them, really optimized how to build them, and kind of honed in on this process. So really, they're purpose-driven for specific common workflows. So things like nearby, what's around me, being able to interact with the legend, the attachment viewer, minimalist, just seeing the apps. There's an app to interact with 3D. There's one for imagery. We have a new portfolio one. There's new apps coming out all the time, but they very much are these focused single purpose applications and we're really focusing on kind of getting up and running quickly and then having a great simplified user experience for public audiences. There's a focus interaction. There's always a common set of tools like navigation. We have the ability to integrate with web analytics like Google Analytics, and there's always a search. They're optimized for use on any device. So we've actually made some design choices in the Instant Apps for how this mobile experience works. And then they're also built and tested to work with accessible technology because our audience that we're designing this for very much is that public audience, and we need to make sure that everyone can use these types of applications. The next one are dashboards, and these are probably the most popular or most viewed applications, GIS applications ever. Maybe specifically because of the Johns Hopkins COVID dashboard, but these have really taken off over the last little while. And what are they? They're your information at a glance, and they're designed for those who need it. So the great part about them is they're simple. You can see all of the information that's presented in a single screen. And then they've also got these great intuitive tools that really build into that kind of quick glance and learning. So we've got maps in here, lists, charts, and gauges. The list, charts, and gauges provide some summarizing information or provide kind of some guided information into the content in the dashboard. The interactive elements can be linked so that you can actually click on something and see what information that pulls up kind of in the charts and widgets. They're flexible, so you can drag and drop and kind of locate your widgets and information where you want them to be. And then they're configurable, so they can be built kind of to show for the public, or they can also be built for specific viewing for events, situations, and there's a couple different design options. They're really growing, and then with being able to use Arcade with these components is really making dashboards just such a powerful tool for any audience. Next one is StoryMaps, and it's storytelling that resonates. And one thing with StoryMaps is to really focus on kind of this digital storytelling and this interactive narrative. So it's kind of going through different components like videos, photos, maps, and providing a narrative so users kind of are guided through this experience. They've got express maps for simple map making. They can also utilize existing web maps and apps that are already in the ArcGIS system. They've got really stylish modern designs. So they make even mere mortals like me look like a great story map creator just from the defaults. And I think that that's a really great part of story maps. Not all of them look the same because of the different themes, but they provide a lot of just good looking defaults with the ability to customize. There's an accessibility report available for story maps so that you can actually learn about the accessible components, and they're also optimized for use for all devices. And then Experience Builder. It's a new way of building web apps. It is the next generation web app builder application. Web app builder will be around for quite some time. It's still very valid and very used, but Experience Builder is the next generation built with a 4x JavaScript API. So it is the application that supports the newer capabilities with the web app. I think that the big thing to focus on here is it's built by you. And when you open up Experience Builder, they've got this great logo of a logo of Lego blocks, because it's really up to you on what you build. And they've got a lot of different pieces that you can construct and build exactly how you want. So they've also got some great tools like templates that can get you up and running for specific goals. So you can either start from a template or you can choose to start from scratch. They've got a variety of different widgets for different purposes, and they can all work together. And then there's the ability to build both single and multi-page apps for display on either a fixed or a scrolling screen. So that's where you have some capabilities to kind of really pick that interaction or the way you navigate through the application. It supports a ton of content, videos, maps, photos, integrated 2D and 3D, and it also has an integrated Survey 123 widget, which can be really, really helpful. It's got a modern interface with drag and drop components with a ton of themes and layouts. So you've really got that customization part. It's got some intuitive navigation between the elements, and you can also brand all of your apps and themes. Another really neat part about Experience Builder is the kind of mobile responsive part. And that's where you actually get to build the mobile experience. With StoryMaps and with Instant Apps, we actually build that mobile experience for you, kind of based on kind of best practices that we have. But with Experience Builder, if there is kind of something you want to show in the mobile experience or not show in the mobile experience, you get to make that choice. So it can be a really, really rich experience. We don't always want to show the exact same thing to someone on a mobile device as we do on a web browser because of the vast difference of kind of what the users are doing, but it is important to kind of, if you do want to make those choices. Imagine having a web mapping app without a map. Is that something you'd want to do on a mobile device or not? And then there's just more choices. So a couple that I didn't get into are ArcGIS Hub, Web App Builder, Insights pages. So if you want to actually show the reports of some of the Insights work, configurable apps are still around. And then there's also quite a few native apps that you may have worked with before. And that's really when you want to have the application on your phone and not go to the URL each time. So we've got Field Map, Survey 123, Collector, and then App Studio, which actually can create apps for you on native devices. And they do have some connections to Instant Apps, which are pretty cool. So how do you choose the right app? And this is really kind of a mental model or a thought process that Alan will go into in a little bit more detail. But as you can see here, I've got a triangle, and I'll show a couple different versions because there's a lot of different places to start, and it'll kind of point you into a different direction or really highlight kind of those capabilities that are going to lead to the decision making, to you making decisions. And as you can see here, a lot of times I start with the purpose or the data, because a lot of times that's really what drives the application. With the purpose, sometimes you have someone who's generating requirements. So if someone, let's say in the county assessor's office, said, hey, I need you to create me this map with these 5 capabilities, that can very much determine which app you're going to build. And then it might go down to the app creator, where you start thinking about the skills that you have, the knowledge that you have, the time you have to build it. Then kind of who is your audience and what are the design customizations? And as you think through that, it'll point you into kind of which type of application you're looking to use. But let's say you're actually creating a public application and your audience is the most important part. And actually that's going to drive your entire app. You're like, I need the public to be able to use that. It's going to drive kind of the data you collect, the purpose of the application. And then the app creator probably won't matter as much because you're going to be pointed to the application that you want. And then the design and customizations you can use, but usually those need to be a little bit more simplified if you're really focusing on that public audience. Sometimes it's the app creator. If you're someone who kind of puts out 20 web app builder apps a day for different purposes or different people in your huge organization, you might want to just do that. And the audience is aware of how to use those applications and that type of thing. Or maybe, hey, it's time for me to learn something new. I'm going to use a different app, or I want to try this with StoryMaps. So that can also kind of start with, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what my audience is looking for. And then how do I fit the purpose into kind of both of those concepts? And then same with design and customization. If you really need to be able to pick and control everything, a lot of times that can very much set kind of what builder you're going to use. And then you've got to figure out how to make that match your purpose, audience, and kind of your skill level. So sometimes we take a look at this as kind of like time and customization and design choice. And there's definitely a relationship between the amount of customization and design you're putting into and the amount of time it takes to create an app. So with the instant apps, there are some customization and design choices, but there aren't a lot. So if you are going to go through the express setup with the defaults, you can get up and running pretty quickly. Again, with StoryMaps and dashboards, it depends on what you're looking to include, because you can spend a lot of time or a little time, again, depending on the topic. And same with Web App Builder or Experience Builder. There's just a lot of choices there if you want to do all of that. But if you're familiar kind of with the technology and you've worked with it before, and maybe you have created templates, and there's a lot of templates that you can create with all of this technology, then it might not take you very much time at all to get up and running with the different technologies. So really, it kind of shows that app creator can significantly reduce the amount of time, if that is kind of a dependent consideration or something that's really going to drive which app you're going to use. Having knowledge or kind of getting through building the first app or two can really kind of reduce that amount of time. So I'm about to pass this over to Alan to go through some of these concepts in a more practical way. But I do want to say that there's a lot of great resources out there at the UC. And here are some of the sessions, and then the app-specific documentation. And I really encourage you to kind of read through it, see what information's out there, see what things that you can learn kind of as you get to know these different applications and build the right ones. All right, over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Kelly. I have prepared a video demonstration, so I'm going to go ahead and get that started. I'd like to take the information that Kelly discussed and provide a practical example of how to apply these ideas in a real-world scenario. To do that, I'm going to expand on the Pleasantville scenario that Kelly mentioned earlier. In addition to the apps Kelly mentioned, let's also say Pleasantville wanted to introduce and adopt a highway program. The purpose of this project would be to clean up roads and highways, and in exchange provide public sign advertising for volunteers. To get this project started, we would need to create an application that could accomplish the following workflows. Volunteers would need the ability to select a road segment and submit an application for it. Those same public volunteers would also need to be able to schedule trash bag pickups after trash collection. Internal Pleasantville staff would need the ability to monitor and approve or decline incoming applications. And that staff needs the ability to monitor incoming trash bag pickup requests and forward them to the appropriate collection team. As Kelly outlined, there are 4 main considerations we want to take into account when planning a new app. The purpose, which often goes hand in hand with the data, the audience, the design or customization needs, and the app creator. Let's apply these to our Adopt a Highway scenario and brainstorm how our requirements fall into these 4 considerations. Looking first at the data or purpose consideration, for this project we have a few purposes. We want public users to be able to view, select, and sign up to adopt a road segment. And the data for this is an existing public road network dataset. However, this is not a situation where we are trying to educate or tell a story about the existing data. The existing dataset is simply used as a tool to make it easier for the public to engage with this project. The second purpose is live monitoring incoming permit or pickup requests. This is related to a new dataset with data populated by the public submissions. Since the data is new incoming data, the purpose is to display the most important or relevant bits of information from the new public data submissions. Lastly, the final purpose is to facilitate staff maintaining accurate and up-to-date records. And this is also related to the new public data submissions. When considering the audience, from the workflows that we've discussed in our previous slides, we can see that there are really 2 audiences for our application: public volunteers and internal Pleasantville staff. When considering the design, our design choices should flow out of the app purpose and audience considerations. We want to design our application to meet the needs of the audience and as outlined in the purpose. In this case, we have multiple purposes for both audiences. The public has 2 data submission workflows. Therefore, we will need to design a non-complex app with 2 separate guided data submission workflows. When working with non-GIS professionals, including all of the bells and whistles that are possible in an application can just lead to confusion. We're not trying to wow anyone. We're trying to make the sign-up process as intuitive and straightforward as possible because we want the hurdle for joining this project to be as low as possible. And design will play an important role in that. On the other hand, with staff, we have less emphasis on a guided experience and more emphasis on displaying critical information clearly. We're looking for an intuitive display interface for easy data monitoring and a controlled editing design for efficient data updates. However, similar to the requirements for public users, there needs to be an easy-to-use design. Lastly, we need to consider the abilities and limitations of the app creator. In this scenario, the app creator is a GIS professional with app creation experience, but not a programmer. Of course, in the real world, the app creator is you. So to summarize, we have multiple purposes and data sources, multiple audiences, multiple design needs, and a single app creator. When we have multiple diverse needs like this, it usually makes the most sense to just create more than one app. A good guideline of thumb is to create one app per audience type, and a second guideline would be one app per purpose. The reasons for these guidelines is that it's easier to design a good app if you're trying to fulfill only a single purpose. It's also less confusing for audiences if the entire app is designed for them specifically, rather than for them and a handful of other types of end users. So, since we've decided we need to make a couple of apps, let's break it down and focus on the public app or apps first. As a reminder, for the public-facing app, we need to have an easy-to-use public data collection app that's designed for a public audience. And that design needs to include several guided workflows created by a GIS professional. Using Kelly's mental model, absolutely the biggest priority at the top of the pyramid is the audience. We have to create something the general public can and will want to be able to use. So the audience should be at the top of our mind with every decision that we make. Stemming from that, the design is the second most crucial priority. An easy-to-use interface and guided experience is crucial to making the application successful. With these considerations in mind, using the Survey123 widget in Experience Builder gives the intuitive guided experience of Survey123 within the highly flexible Experience Builder architecture. Experience Builder can allow the integration of multiple very complex workflows, but at the same time, it can also allow us to strip everything down to a bare essentials web experience if we want, which in our case gives end users two simple options, a guided sign-up or a guided pickup scheduler. Another thing I want to point out here is that I'm already violating my one purpose per app guideline. And this is a great demonstration of why what we're talking about here are guidelines and not rules. I think there's a good reason why we can disregard the one app per purpose guideline in this specific case, and I can show that in a little demo here. This is the Experience Builder with Survey123 application that was created for the Adopt a Highway project. In this app, a user selects which workflow they want to complete, the permit application or the pickup scheduler. Both workflows have a similar look and feel. After either choice, they zoom to their area of interest, select an appropriate feature, and fill out the guided user interface. I have an example filled out in advance to submit. As you can see, we have stripped everything down to a very straightforward functionality. Map navigation, workflow selection, and a survey interface. This stems from our focus on audience and design and creating something straightforward to use. Despite the fact that we have multiple workflows, both workflows parallel each other in design and appearance. There's an easy way to distinguish between the two workflows using the toggle buttons along the top. And since both workflows would be accomplished by the same end users, it's not confusing to have them both built into the same web experience. Our second app was the live data monitoring application. As a reminder, the purpose of this app was to monitor incoming data. The audience was the internal Pleasantville staff. And the design requirement was the need to understand the status at a quick glance. As always, the app creator is ArcGIS Professional. In this case, our highest priorities were design and purpose, which are along the top of the pyramid. These really feed into each other in this particular case, because the critical functionality needed here was to show a live feed of incoming information, and the design needed to be such that the most important aspects of that incoming information were clear and obvious, even at a glance. This leads us to conclude that we should use ArcGIS Dashboards. Dashboards are an intuitive way to get an understanding with a quick glance. So if we go back to our demo, we can see the ArcGIS dashboard which we have created for this project. We can quickly see overall the majority, or about 2/3 of the roads, have already been adopted. The number of trash pickups that need to be processed today is displayed on the upper right, and below that is the list of incoming pickup requests, with the most recent at the top. I can click on the Contact Disposal Pickup Team to have a pre-populated email created, which I can send to alert the trash collection department. Mirroring that on the left is the list of latest permit applications. It's clear, it's straightforward, and the important things are in bright colors or at the top of the list. This app also seamlessly integrates with our final data editing app via the Open Approval app link, which brings us back to our slides. Our last app is the Permit Approval app. The purpose of this application, as a reminder, was approving requests and updating attributes as needed. The audience again is the internal Pleasantville staff, and the design we're looking for is an advanced editing configuration. The app creator is a GIS professional. There are multiple ways to edit a feature. In fact, you don't even need an application. You could edit directly on the feature service item user interface, or even submit edits directly to a database. But in reality, we'd like a more controlled experience for the data editors. We really need an efficient and effective way to do specific editing tasks, and we need to streamline complex editing workflows. We have to easily update related records, and we want editors to update certain fields but not others. The priority here is design. We have the editing functionality already. The important thing is we want it to look and work well, which will make doing the work easier. This doesn't necessarily need to be a guided experience, but we need to streamline the editing process to make it easier and more efficient. With this in mind, advanced editing workflows means that we're going to want to use Web App Builder, which provides the most advanced editing functionality with the Smart Editor widget. Back to the demo, we've streamlined the process so the editing app can be opened directly from the dashboard. When a new permit request is submitted, it appears in the top of the latest permit application request list. Pleasantville staff will see the feature appear at the top of the list and can select the Open Approval app link to access the editing application. This app is configured to have already zoomed to and selected the feature from the dashboard. Pleasantville staff can open the Smart Editor widget to see the road segment and click the related table to see who has submitted an application. After reviewing the permit request, they can mark the permit as approved and then mark the road segment as not available for further permit requests. The application is configured to allow the display of all fields, but only allow editing on fields which should be updated by the Pleasantville staff. The priority was design, so we went with the option that allowed us to configure the best editing experience. By linking the related records together within the editing experience, users are less likely to make mistakes by editing the wrong record. By limiting the editable fields, users are less likely to edit attributes incorrectly, thereby streamlining and improving the editing experience. To wrap this up, all three of the applications we demonstrated today were chosen by carefully considering four main considerations: the purpose or data, audience, design, and the app creator. Using these considerations, you can more effectively narrow down the best app to choose for your project. Finally, there is no right answer when asking which type of app you should create. But when working with multiple audiences or workflows, it is often wise to divide and conquer. Make a single app per workflow or audience. Thank you for attending. We will now move on to the question and answer portion of this presentation.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Alan, for that fantastic presentation. I do want to acknowledge we did have some issues with the stream at the beginning, but we were able to restore it. The beginning of the presentation and the presentation in its entirety, including the slides, are going to be available on demand later today. If you want to go back and mention that part that you may have missed. Anything to note, Kelly and Alan, before I get into the questions?
Yeah, I think just kind of what you missed was a little bit of an overview of apps and some customer examples. I'm not sure where it started coming in, but I'm sure that you'll be able to pick it up pretty quickly. Sorry about that. I can't guarantee there's any great jokes in there. Maybe.
Well, we are going to, because of the delay, going to have 5 extra minutes at the end of the presentation. So we'll have about 9 minutes for questions here. So we'll just go ahead and get started. First one I've got here, Alan, we've got a question about the geometry from a web map and how that works with a survey shown in the workflows you were explaining there. Can you give us a little bit more information on that?
Yeah, sure. So the in the demonstration that I just gave, the 2 surveys that were being filled out were actually not capturing geometry. They were related tables. So they were purely data tables with no geometry, and they were related directly to the actual existing road network. It would be possible if you wanted to capture the geometry. When you add a Survey 123 widget into Experience Builder, one of the configuration options is to link data from a selected feature in the map. So you can capture attributes and geometry that way if that's necessary or relevant for your particular workflows.
Thank you for that, Alan. Next question here is for Kelly. Is Experience Builder a replacement for Web App Builder, or will we see an update to Web App Builder soon?
So it's a bit of a complicated question, and I would encourage you to come to the next session, get 3 hours live with Kelly for the next little while. But Jingsha is going to be presenting on Experience Builder. We're going to have a Q&A, which is a good time to ask specific questions. But generally, Web App Builder isn't going to have the same functionality as Experience Builder. It is one of the older applications that's built with the 3x JavaScript API, so it can't support kind of some of the new capabilities that I was mentioning earlier, like group layers or multi-element pop-ups. So it's not that it's not going to be updated, but it's not going to get that new 4x capability. So if you are looking for that, that's somewhere where you're going to want to start building things with Experience Builder, or the Instant Apps, or StoryMaps, or Field Maps. But all of those have been built with the 4x API.
Awesome. And I think you kind of answered this question in your last in that last statement, but can you suggest any of the current apps that are effectively, I don't know if being phased out is the word, in favor of the newer ones, but you mentioned some of the 4x apps.
Right.
If you want to add to that.
Yeah. So I think the apps right now to keep an eye on for things that may be phased out are some of the older configurable apps, because they were built with the 3x JavaScript API, and we are currently actively building replacements, such as kind of the new StoryMaps builder with some of the classic StoryMaps, or we just redid an app that was called GeoList with the new Countdown app. So there are some replacements coming out. So I'd say keep an eye on those. That being said, when we move apps into mature support with the configurable apps, they're still available. They'll still work. Again, it's just you do need to migrate to the newer ones to get access to the newer functionality.
All right, thank you for that. Next up, it looks like we've got a couple kind of specific questions from users. So I'll start with this one here for Alan. This user's been asked to make a map where users can draw polygons of potential building footprints and see animal and plant species based on feature layer data that they'll be affecting. They're able to do this with Arcade Intersects, but they're wondering if this can be done on the fly.
Sure. Yeah, I would say within the Web App Builder application, there are a handful of widgets that, depending on specifically what your requirements are, might accomplish your goals. There's a handful of them. The ones that come to mind are info summary, situation awareness, and near me. There could be some others as well. In each of those, you'll have the capability of drawing polygons on a map, drawing on the fly, and capturing information from existing features from them, depending on what you need. Specifically, you could potentially build reports, just have those features display on the map in a highlighted fashion, export them to a CSV, things like that. So you'd have to go into the specifics of what you're really looking for, but I think there are options for you within some of the Web App Builder widgets.
Great, thank you. And then Kelly, back to you. This user's created a custom pop-up in the new map viewer, but they're not seeing that same custom pop-up in Web App Builder, and they're curious about that.
Yeah, so again, that's one of the differences between kind of the different APIs that the apps were built with. So if you are building a multi-component pop-up in the new map viewer, you're going to need to use a more modern app builder in order to see that multi-element pop-up. What will happen with Web App Builder or with a 3x application is we'll just show that first element. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. But if you do want to have those really nice pop-ups, again, I'd suggest starting to look into some of the newer applications.
All right, and then over to you, Alan. Within a story map, is there a way to show a static overview map on a live interactive map? So this customer is looking for some sort of overview map that remains static.
Yeah, again, I think it's going to come down to the specifics of exactly what the end user, what you're looking for, and how you want it to appear. Some ideas that come to mind, potentially using a swipe block within your story map application. I'm not sure if you've looked into that, but you could have, perhaps just a base map, something you can't really interact with, and then swipe back to a map that has more interactive elements in it, if that's what you're looking for. Within a single map, if you just wanted a layer that you can't interact with, you could have that either as the base map or add it as a map service layer in order to just have essentially a reference layer. If you're looking for something really truly static, you could have include a picture. Story maps obviously have picture functionality, so you could include a picture of your map as the static version, and then flow down into or toggle over to the interactive map if that's what you're looking for.
And one more thing to add, maybe outside of story maps, is we do have the inset map or the overview map option. It's available in some of the instant apps, so that might also be something to take a look at, or embed that into a story map, in addition to Alan's advice.
Great to have lots of options there. Navigation boundary also comes to mind, which is available in several instant apps. You can set it to control, you know, exactly where people can scroll, how your app viewers can scroll and navigate around the map, and you can make that relatively static. Looks like we've got just about a minute left. Any final thoughts from our presenters here, Kelly or Alan?
Yeah, thanks again. I'm sorry about the technical issues. If you do have further questions, please reach out to me or any of the additional experts on this. We're just waiting for messages, so please let us know. And yeah, any feedback would be great, or find us on the community.
One just thing that I saw one question come in about what's the best way to learn or get started from a beginner. And I think besides just trying it out on your own, is going to learn.arcgis.com and looking at, there's a lot of videos, a lot of tutorials you can go through there. So it's a great way to get introduced to applications. And thanks for your time, everyone.
Thanks everybody for joining.